All right, we've talked about Mike and Lucy and the various ways that they drift in and out of authenticity, and the nature of their bad faith, self-deception, dread, despair, all that stuff. Let's move now to Paulo and Lucy. Paulo, Lucy, and Jasmine and Rachel. Paulo is a fantastic character in that he is as frustrating and irritating as a real high school kid. He makes so many bad decisions. And it can be really frustrating because it's his realism that makes him irritating. And let's start very early in the reading. Paulo's feelings for Lucy are a lot more organic and less forward than Mike's are. And a lot more forward than, a lot less forward than Lucy's is. You get the sense that Paulo does like Lucy, but he kind of is just so interested in girls, period, that he doesn't really differentiate between any of them. It's only when things start to get really serious and when Lucy starts to kind of suffer her depressive breakdown that Paulo really starts to explore his feelings for her. When things come to a head with Mike and Lucy, when Lucy tells Mike that she loves him, and she begins to confront the fact that he's not going to be with her, what does Lucy do? She goes to Paulo in a way to try to deal with the emotional distress of being rejected. Now, anybody with a half brain cell can look at this and say, whoa, wait a minute, that is a very inauthentic thing to do, because Lucy is using Paulo to basically act as an emotional bandage for her own pain. That is 100% not authentic. It's understandable, but there's something about that behavior on her part that is almost abusive in a way. She goes to Paulo and she ends up kind of throwing herself at him. Paulo does something very authentic, and I think very admirable, in refusing to take things too far with Lucy, because as he says, she's not in her right mind at that moment. She doesn't know what she's doing. So things don't progress very far as their intimacy is concerned. He basically tells her no. Now, here's where things get weird with Paulo. Paulo, I think, is the most interesting character in the whole comic. I used to really like Lucy for her development, but Paulo is right up there now. What happens is, Paulo has had a couple of situations like the one he had with Lucy, where girls want to come to him, and he's just like, I don't want to do that yet. So, if you really think about it, think for a minute about what is really stopping Paulo. What's going on with him? Why does he keep running into this situation? Because there's been like 2 girls who have basically thrown themselves at him, and he always says no. Now, one of Paulo's friends, David, starts to make fun of him and tells him that, are you not a man? And Paulo then goes out and does what is, in my opinion, the most reprehensible thing he could do in this situation. Because he left things unfinished with Lucy. Lucy kind of thought that they were starting to get together. But after David makes fun of him, he goes and sleeps with 2 other girls on first dates. What is really happening here? Because the reason I think this is such an interesting development in the comic is that Paulo passes himself off as like a player, but he's not. He's a little bit more complicated than that, because he won't go through physical intimacy with Lucy, but then these other girls who mean absolutely nothing to him, he goes after. Why? It's a very strange thing, right? Well, if you look at Paulo's behavior, something very interesting starts to come out. What is Paulo really trying to do? I would say, this is my theory, but I think that this could be argued. Paulo ends up having very strong feelings for Lucy. I think they were there from the very beginning, and Paulo was very steeped in bad faith about how strongly he actually felt. So, in a way, his escapades with Rachel and Jess are an attempt to distance himself from Lucy. He's trying to push her away. And he acts dumb in the comic. He's like, oh no, I didn't mean for it to be like that. But, come on, really? This actually makes a lot of sense, because it takes Paulo an incredible amount of time to come to terms with the fact that he really does have very strong feelings for Lucy. Given some time, he wrestles with himself. And the one of the best examples of bad faith I've ever seen is the chapter, I think, A Piece of Cake, when he's taking leftover cake to Lucy. The inner dialogue that he's going through as he's trying to convince himself that he's doing this just as a friend. Because Paulo has yet another girlfriend at this point, Jasmine. Paulo doesn't like Jasmine very much. He's with her because she's there. It's a very unhealthy thing that they're doing, but they're more friends than anything. And he's trying to convince himself that he doesn't really have feelings for Lucy, but he just so obviously does. He is literally in a war with himself, trying to convince himself, just so steeped in the bad faith, and that little bit of dread is starting to come in. That dread, that doubt, that realization, oh no, I can't run away from this anymore. I can't abdicate my responsibility to it. I feel this way. You see the gradual onset of that emotional difficulty. Now, Jasmine's role in this is fascinating as well. Because when he meets Jasmine, Jasmine makes it very clear that she's not interested in going far with him on an intimacy basis. She's very religious. You can kind of glean that from the reading. That's not something she's going to do. So why does Paulo actually ask her or let her be his girlfriend? Well, if Paulo is really afraid of affection, if he is really frightened of it, and if he is trying to run away from his feelings for Lucy, Jasmine as a girlfriend makes a lot of sense, because she's not going to ask him and she's not going to pressure him for that type of intimacy. So the whole relationship between him and Jasmine makes a lot of sense if Paulo is struggling with a fear of intimacy. Do you see how, as we're doing this existential analysis, we're also kind of like shifting into psychoanalysis as well. We're trying to really think about what motivates Paulo. Why does he do the incredibly strange things that he does? And I argue that he's afraid of intimacy. He does not want to get too close to the people that he truly cares about, and he's really worried about hurting people. Now, this chapter with the party, when he does finally discuss what he really feels, first off, he tells his ex-girlfriend, Tess. So he has to go to an ex-girlfriend in order to kind of like process the feelings he has for Lucy. And he finally admits it. He finally says, yes, that's the truth. That's the way it is. And he realizes he has to break it off with Jasmine. Again, I cannot sing enough praises for Veronica Vera and just how realistic this played out. He goes to break things off with Jasmine, and she beats him to it, right? They mutually kind of agree that the relationship isn't going anywhere. She says she's not ready. And the best twist is the fact that as soon as Paulo tells her that there's someone else, what happens? Jasmine wants him. Jasmine immediately is hurt. Very hurt. To the point that she says, you haven't, she alludes to the fact she thinks that he's cheated on her, but he says, no, I wanted to do right by you. I wanted to conclude this before I went and, chased Lucy. So now Jasmine is revealed to be going through the exact same process. Jasmine had stronger feelings than she wanted to admit, and the fact that Paulo wants someone else has drug all of that out into the front. Dread, despair, and then what happens? that's when Jasmine finally kisses Paulo at the party. It is one of the saddest and most realistic scenes. Anybody who has struggled with, like, problems in love and relationships really understands what's going on right here. And the fact that, you want what you can't have. And you don't realize you want something until you cannot have it. So there's so much self-deception, and there's so much disingenuousness. And immediately, what does Jasmine do in order to distance herself from Paulo? She starts insulting him in later chapters. She starts saying he's not mature enough for her. She really starts to bring out the fangs in order to, create more of a divide between them. Her attitude after the kiss at the party completely shifts. And it's almost exactly what Paulo was doing when he was trying to establish more distance between him and Lucy. As the chapter gets, as the comic gets more into the current chapters, because the comic is still actually being written. New pages are posted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As it goes along, Paulo learns that Lucy's gone and has, again, a very, very understandable emotional breakdown. That he invested so much in finally telling Lucy how he felt, right? So much of what he had invested in, what his self was built up around, finally coming to terms, taking responsibility. She's gone. Everything that he is, everything that he wants, has been taken from him. And that brings him to the absolute worst pinnacle of despair. What is his coping mechanism? Rachel. He goes to Rachel, and they begin a relationship. He finally achieves authenticity. He finally achieves honesty. And when it gets derailed, the first thing he does is start lying to himself about what he really wants and what he really needs to do. Paulo is almost 100% incapable of making a good decision. He makes so many bad decisions because when the going gets tough, the first thing he needs to do is lie to himself about what he really needs and what he really wants. Existential bonanza. It's so good from an existential standpoint. And again, for students who have a fresh perspective from high school, realistic. This is what people who don't have solid identities and don't have a lot of confidence, this is what they do. This is how they avoid painful truths. They oscillate from one person to another, and they hide from the truth. So, that's an existentialist overview of BCB. New assignment to come. I love making videos like this.